Shalom, and welcome to the Parasha Pod. I'm Rabbi Mordechai Rosenberg, here with Rabbi Menachem Leibtag, and we are talking Torah together.
Parashat Vaetchanan.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's time to learn.
Even though it's vacation time.
That's right.
And Yeshiva's closed.
So, Parashat Vaetchanan starts with a reframing, well, it has a reframing of the Har Sinai story. We get the Aseret Dibrot, but before that, we're told about how the whole scene went down. Moshe is explaining it. But he really emphasizes a few details that seem to me not really necessary to emphasize. For instance, he goes over and over again that you didn't see any image of God, right? You didn't see any tmuna. So my question is, why would we have thought that we saw a tmuna, a picture of God, an image of God? It's in the, or that we would make an image of God in memory of it. Like, it's in the Ten Commandments itself that we shouldn't make any images, divine images.
It doesn't say not to make divine images of other gods.
Right.
How about an image of your own God?
Well, it seems to just say it generally, doesn't it?
Well, I like to bring an example because it's the end of the school year, end of yeshiva, muzmanim. Almost every group that comes for a gap year, any program, whatever it is, even a summer program, at the end of the program, they always have a sweatshirt, a t-shirt, and no one in the program needs another sweatshirt. That's for sure. They got 20 at home.
Yeah.
What do they need?
Something to remember.
They need to remember the key events in your life, especially events when there's a lot of people gathering together, require some object to remember them with. That's human nature. Now, the topic of Avodah Zarah actually begins, look in Perek Daled, it begins in Pasuk Tet. Which is a very important mitzvah that a lot of us aren't familiar with, because we know the holiday of Shavuot, we remember Matan Torah. Yeah. But what we do on Shavuot is actually a daily commandment. Just like there's a daily commandment to remember the Exodus, there happens to be an eternal commandment to remember the events of Har Sinai, not only what happened, also what didn't happen. Okay. Look what it says in Pasuk, in Perek Daled, Pasuk Tet. It says, Rak hishamer laha, ushmor nafshecha ma'od, and be careful. And that's a key word in Devarim, lishmor. Remember, even Zachor, which is with Shamor in the Ten Commandments. Keep that in mind. Okay. Make sure not to forget what you saw with your own eyes. You experienced Mount Sinai, the theophany of Mount Sinai. Remember what you saw, or what you didn't see, but what you felt. To see in Hebrew, in the Torah, is a key word. Ever since day one, remember, God sees that it's good. God speaks and God sees. What do you mean He sees? But He when you understand something, like in English also, you see what I mean. Like I'll ask him, do you see? You understand what I mean? Yeah. So we saw things. We understood something at Har Sinai. Remember, it says v'holam ro'im et hakolot. Remember, they see sound. What is that? Remember, that was back in chapter. Back in chapter 20, after the Ten Commandments in Sefer Shemot. Yeah. What do you mean they saw the kolot? Right. The kolot means to understand. It's a buzzword through almost all of Chumash. God says, I see the suffering of my people. And means He understands the suffering of my people.
Blow up lots of different Torah. On that line.
Yeah. But to see means to understand or to identify, to internalize something. Yeah. So He says, remember what you saw. And don't forget it, and teach that to your children. Now, the events of Har Sinai.
But hold on a second. It does say, your eyes saw.
Exactly.
That doesn't sound like your brain saw.
We'll see in a minute. It's a bit misleading. See why? What to remember? Remember the day you stood in front of God at Har Sinai. Remember the fear. Remember the experience. Okay? Yeah. When God told me, gather the nation together. That's why the end of the book is going to match this with the mitzvah of Hakel. Because Hakel, in other words, how do we remember Har Sinai in our lives? Every 7 years, we relive the event. The last mitzvah of Sefer Devarim, which is the last mitzvah of Chumash, will be every 7 years to relive the experience, which is to instill in every person the fear of God. And this commitment to keep the mitzvot. Yeah. Vashmim et dvarai, I'll let them hear my words. Asher Yimedun, in other words, that they have to teach or learn the words of God, the laws of God, to fear Him. Lirelti, Kol Yamim, Hashem Chaim al Adama, Vet B'nei Milamedun. In other words, I have to teach the events to my children, they have to teach their children, to instill them the fear of God, and the commitment to keep his mitzvot. Okay? And then not only you have to keep the mitzvot, you have to teach the mitzvot. You have to learn them. Mm-hmm. That's why it's the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, of teaching, not just keeping laws, but studying laws. We'll see, it's going to be right up front in the main speech. Remember that idea, there's not only a commandment, lishmor, to keep mitzvot, also to teach mitzvot and to learn them. It's called Talmud Torah. Remember V'shinantam levanecha, which we learned Talmud Torah from? It's all going to be in Devarim. To keep something going, I need to pass a tradition, not just of rituals and laws and tradition, but I need to keep laws and study the laws. Because when you study the laws, you derive principles, and then you have to apply them in future generations. We're talking about a long-term commitment, an eternal commitment between God and the people that has to last eternity. And therefore, times can change, things can change, and therefore, understanding the principles of the laws is going to be critical in studying Torah. Now, then he continues and tells what happened. You were just commanded to remember that event, not to forget it, and do what? And teach that to your children. And so then
remember, don't forget, keep it, teach it.
And teach it to your children. And at that event, we came close to God. We stood at the foot of the mountain. The Har Bo'er Ba'esh, fire is a big topic at Har Sinai. Remember? That goes back to the burning bush.
Yeah.
God's first encounter with Moshe Rabbeinu is fire.
Yeah.
And most of the Parashim say that's already shadowing what's going to happen in Sefer Dvarim. What's going to happen also at Har Sinai, where the people say we can't stand the fire, and we're going to be consumed by this fire, and Moshe survives the fire. But the idea that something organic can survive a fire, and Dafka Sneh, which later becomes Sinai, there's so much imagery here with the burning bush story and what's happening here in Devarim. But keep that in mind. But again, I want to get back to our main topic. It says, you stood close to me, right? And I made my words heard. You heard what I said. And then, Vaydaber Hashem alechem b'toch ha'esh, God spoke to you from within the fire. That's the same thing happened at the burning bush, right? The Malach Hashem speaks to Moshe from the fire, from the sneh. Kol devarim atem shomim, you hear the words of God, utmuna incham ro'im zulatiko. That's the answer to your question. You heard the words of God, but you didn't see any image of God. You didn't see a picture of God. So God said, you saw something, you understood something, but you only heard things.
Okay, so you're saying the fact that we saw in the sense of understanding, and that could be confused with actually having seen something real, like physical. I mean.
Which will lead later, which sort of led to the story of the golden calf, which we'll get to probably soon. Okay. Now listen carefully. What words did we hear from God? V'aged lechem et brito. At that time, this is introducing what's going to happen in the main speech in a minute, in chapter 5. God told you then, remember, his covenant, which he commanded you to keep lasot, aser tadvarim. That's the idea of 10 statements, 10 parashiyot. And you wrote them on 2 things. And therefore, your physical memory of this event on the natural level, or luchot habrit. Not that. That's your old brit. And now, at the same time that you heard the 10 commandments, right? God commanded me to teach you laws that came with the 10 commandments, which would be the laws of Sefer Devarim. We discussed that briefly last week. We'll prove it this week. Okay? And what? Chukim u'mishpatim, that phrase will come up again. Again, statutes and laws. Lasotchem ba'aretz, to keep them. When you come to the land, asher atem uvrim shama l'rishta, you're going to go now to inherit it, conquer it, and set up a nation, keep them. Now, because I just commanded you never to forget this event, and you saw something, you understood something, but you didn't see anything, right? Because I commanded you to remember this event and not to forget it, what might somebody think you should do?
I need to make something to help me remember.
A sweatshirt, what I call, okay? In other words, I need some physical object to remember the event. Pen tashchitun, the same word we have by this in the golden calf, right? Lest you go, sort of go astray. And what happened? Usually it means you start in one direction and you start going downhill a little bit. We have the same word by the flood. Okay. Remember, God said you didn't see any tmuna at Har Sinai. You might go astray and say, no, I want to make a picture of this event. I want to remember it. Now, for some reason, God gives us examples of what not to do. It's like saying, don't you dare eat chocolate, don't eat white chocolate, black, dark chocolate, sweet chocolate, you follow? So they say, or don't think about it. Don't. don't give us any ideas.
Right.
But listen to the ideas that Chumash is saying, don't even think about this. Tell me if you catch the pattern. Look at the word tavnit.
Yeah.
Tavnit means like a mold, or like when you, in a baking pan in modern day Hebrew is a tavnit.
Right.
But it's when you shape something, when you put something liquid into a container that forms a certain shape. That's called a tavnit. Tavnit zachar nekeva. Where's the first time we had zachar nekeva? That's in Bereshit, in day 5 and 6. Okay. Tavnit kol be'ema asher ba'aretz, the image of what? Or the shape of any animal on the land. Or tavnit, or maybe of a bird. Tavnit kol tzipor kanaf asher teif alav hashamayim. Tavnit romes badama, tavnit kol daga asher b'mayim mitachat la'aretz. Zachar nekeva, animals, birds, fish. What's going on?
It's like a reference to the
last days 4, 5, 6. Days 5 and 6 of creation. So we have day 6, and now we have day 5. Well, what's day 4? The sun and the moon. Look at the next pasuk.
Okay.
Pentisai necha shamayma, v'rita et hashemesh v'te'ereach v'tekochavim. You look at the heavens, you see the sun, the moon, and the stars. Kol tzva shamayim. It's a screaming chapter 1 of Bereshit, isn't it?
Okay.
V'nidachta v'ishtachvit alehem, v'avadetam, asher chalak Hashem Elohecha otam l'chol hamim tachat kol hashamayim. God, that's for the other nations. In other words, if other nations use symbols of creation to remember God, that's okay from God's point of view. We're not talking about idol worship. We're talking about using objects that God created.
Wow.
The whole first point of Bereshit is that all the powers of nature stem from one God, from one power. Right? There's no sun God. Remember, God made the sun. I like to trick around. It's the son of God, S-U-N. But people look at the Rambam in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, the laws of idol worship. His first halacha talks about the history of how idol worship began. Everyone knew that God created, and everyone knew God created the sun. But the sun was so awesome because God created it. They got so focused on the sun that God made it. They forgot about who made him, and the sun became a god.
Right.
Now, that's in simplified explanation of what classic idol worship is. There's powers of nature, which our lives are dependent on. And because I need the sun to work for me, can't be too hot, can't be too cold, etc. I need its light. I need rain, remember? So there's the rain god, there's the sun god, and there's the spooky moon god, and there's stars, and there's constellations. So people might come to think that these, ask any astrologists, they still write them in the paper, people believe in that stuff, that things are in the stars, there's things predetermined. It's a very popular understanding to this day. Chumash is screaming, God made all those items of nature, he's in charge, and they control your life, but God controls all those powers, and God will judge you by way of those powers based on your behavior.
Right.
Yeah. Remember, that's the revolution of Chumash in Judaism. So now, what's the danger of idol worship? That you just pray to the power itself and not who it came from, and you're just praying, remember, as a consumer, not as an employee. Keep the idea of employee, because that would be a big theme in Sefer Dvarim. And therefore, God's saying, remember, it's a good idea. No, I'm bringing up an idea because it's so logical. Like when you learn the Talmud brings up what's called a havamina, opinion, and then we don't follow that opinion. So why bring it up? Because someone else might, if we don't bring it up now and say it's not the right thing, someone later on will come up with that idea. So if we bring it up just to say we don't do that. So God's saying, I just told you not to forget this event, and here's some ideas what you might do to remember the event. Almost what Aaron Metma when he made the Egel.
Right. Aaron
believed in God. He put his back in front of it. Then we talked about back in Shemot that it's a prototype Mishkan. The Mishkan became a kosher Egel. Aaron meant well, but things got out of hand based on their behavior. But the idea that I need to make a symbol of God to remember an event makes perfect sense. We do that in our day-to-day life with everything. And God's saying, even though it's a good idea, don't even think about it. Now,
so hold on. Why then is the Aaron with the Kruvim? Okay?
Oh, you're a step ahead of me.
Okay.
What word introduces all these objects? Tavnit.
Tavnit.
Okay. Tavnit. It's very rare in Chumash. Where's the first time you have Tavnit? V'asu li mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham. Remember chapter 25 in Shemot, beginning of Parasha Truma, verses 8 and 9. K'cho asher ani mareh otach et Tavnit HaMishkan v'Tavnit kol kelav v'chein ta'asu. What Tavnit do we have? We have a Tavnit of what did God give us?
We have the Tavnit of the Mishkan and the Aaron.
Yeah. In other words, what's our symbol of God? Right out of chapter 2 of Bereshit. The second story of creation. There's no doubt that the Mishkan is a legitimate symbol of God. And our symbol of God is going to be the Luchot HaBrit, which he just mentioned. That's a symbol of our, not the symbol of God, a symbol of our commitment to God.
Right.
Of our covenant. That's why it's called Luchot HaBrit. And we want to make sure that that those Luchot, which we need to remember the events of Har Sinai and our commitment that we're employees, we want to make sure that it's going to represent God, but we don't come to treat it like a God, therefore we cover it. And what's the covering called? A Mishkan. Remember, the Mishkan is the cover that covers the whole edifice. So we have a symbol of God that you can't see, but it's there.
But how is it connected to chapter 2 of Bereshit?
Because there's two stories of creation in Chumash, and if Chumash gave us as symbols of our relation with God in the framework of the Kruvim of chapter 2 of Bereshit, remember the Kruvim guard the way to the Derech Etzechaim, etc. So some might think, let's take examples from chapter 1 of Bereshit. If I really believe that God created all the powers of nature, let's take these items of nature that God made and make a big deal about them.
Right.
And therefore, there's what's called a havamina. There's a logical reason why someone might do these things.
Right.
And therefore, Chumash says don't even think about it, because what will happen? It might start off with a good idea, it'll get out of hand, and they'll become a god.
So you're saying the
the
choice of the Kruvim as the kind of only graven image that is acceptable is because the Kruvim themselves kind of block off the pathway to the
guard the way to get to Eitz HaChaim.
To get to Eitz HaChaim, but that Eitz HaChaim might be sort of perceived as
that's the Torah. Eitz HaChaim, that's initially already.
They guard the way to the Eitz HaChaim. They guard the way to the Torah.
What replaces Eitz HaChaim is going to be the Torah.
The tree of life is the Torah, and therefore, so the Kruvim are guiding the way to the Torah. And the Torah is not an image of God; it's the image of our
but protecting the way to God. And therefore, if they're protecting the Aron, and in the Aron are Luchot HaBrit, then the way we return to the Eitz HaChaim and to Gan Eden is by keeping Torah, which will be the last theme that'll be in Parashat Vayelech, at the end of Parashat HaTshuvah, where God's giving you a choice of Chaim and Mavet and Tov and Ra. All the themes of Gan Eden will be at the end of the book. Right.
So the way we return to Gan Eden is through the Torah. Through the Eitz HaChaim.
Yeah. But because Chumash is using imagery from chapter 2, for good reason,
right?
People might think, hey, let's use imagery from chapter 1.
Yeah.
And these are all the examples. So Chumash says, don't even think about it.
So chapter 2, okay. Chapter 1, not okay.
Not okay.
Right.
And therefore, using the word tavnit is reminding me, even though it's okay with the Mishkan, bad idea for you.
Right.
For you. But who's it okay for? Other nations is fine. Now, look at the next line, which is... That's what God says. What's God say? Asher chalachot Hashem otam l'chol hagoyim. Now, remember...
I never picked that up. That God's okay with other nations making graven images as long as they're directing them towards
God. Long as it's the image of God.
Wow.
We just celebrated, celebrate is a bad word. We marked Tisha B'Av, right?
Right.
No, we need a symbol of the destruction. What did Am Yisrael paskin? What's our symbol of the destruction? The Kotel, right? Ask any Jew, right? Yeah. You go visit the Kotel, that's a symbol of the Churban. Which is, that's a topic in itself when returned after the 6 Day War and there was a big argument in Israel. What do we do with the Kotel? Do we make it a beautiful plaza where, a national center? No, there was a big question. Who's going to run the temple area? I mean, not temple area. Who's going to run the Kotel in the area? Will it be run by Misra Datot or by Misra Tayarut? Right. Will it be run by the religion ministry or by the tourism ministry, or by the nation, by the prime minister's office? You follow? Right. Is it a national symbol or is it a religious symbol? It was such a great argument. If you want to study something, it's amazing how because we're told, and when people come there, should it look old and dilapidated and should not? When you go there, should remind you of destruction, or should the Kotel remind you of nationalism and revival? That's an argument to this day, how people view the Kotel. And we have ceremonies. How much should the Israeli flag be flying, over the Kotel area? And where do we go there for celebrations? Again, I'm saying it's a big discussion and how we treat it. What I'm getting at, though, it's important to have a memory of our destruction. But the danger is when that Kotel, when that wall becomes not praying at the wall, but praying to the wall. Right. And when people think you can just write a little piece of paper and that's going to do something, if it's not coming, there's nothing wrong with writing a little note to inspire yourself and put it by the Kotel as a symbolic act. But when you think that wall has magic powers already, ask your local rabbi whether that's good or bad or not. But that and when that becomes the entire religion, that's the hashkata that we're talking about. There's no doubt visiting the Kotel is wonderful. reminds you of the Qurban, our connection to God. That's the one. Don't get me wrong. Same thing when you go to people's graves. You don't pray to the grave. You pray at the grave.
Yeah.
You don't pray. You don't pray to the dead person. You pray. You're inspired by what that dead person reminds you of. But if the entire religion has no the visit to these what's called holy places or sacred places have no effect on your behavior. Rather, you come as a consumer. Oh, I need a raise. I need a refuah. I'm going to go there and say some magic words, but has no effect on your behavior. Again, I'm going to say it's wrong, but ask your local rabbi. But that can get out of hand. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but in the right proportion. When that becomes the entire religion, that's when it's really dangerous. And that's the word hashkata. Remember, Aaron had a good idea, but it got out of hand. We discussed that when we did Sefer Shemot.
So you're saying hashkata is taking a sort of somewhat acceptable idea and then taking it to the wrong place.
Yeah, where it takes you away from God instead of connecting you to God.
Right.
And that's the danger of you need symbolism, but that's the danger of it. Now, the next line, but again, if other nations want to use objects like that to remember God, that's fine with them. God is not makpid. He's not, that's not our issue.
Right.
But for you, of all people, you can't do that. But again, this is an idol worship, IDOL. I call it idol worship, IDLE. Basically, it's pointless.
As in, you're not worshipping a different God. You're worshipping the correct God, but just
in the wrong manner.
In the wrong way.
Now, look at the next line, which makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Pasuk Chaf. Ve'etchem lakach Hashem v'yotzi etchem mikor habarzel mimitzrayim lo la'am nachala k'yom hazeh. What did God do? Now, other nations can use those objects, but God took you out of Egypt, mikor habarzel, from the smelting furnace of Egypt, right?
It's kind of
to
like
make you his nation.
We're the graven image in a way. It's like we were made in a
first.
Pot.
What's a kur barzel? What's a smelting furnace? If I want to make an object, what do? You take metal, you melt it down in a furnace, get it really hot. That's why it's a malacha on Shabbat. Remember, but the mishkan lo tavar reish.
Yeah.
That's why you can't make fire stronger, because you use that to melt down the metals that they collected for the mishkan, and then you take that liquid metal, pour it into a tavnit, into this form, and that makes the symbol. So, what's the big thing? In fact, it was the previous topic in Perek Daled. What did God say right before this whole topic began? Look in Pasuk Hey in Perek Daled.
Yeah.
You'll see my point. Re'eh.
Yeah.
Which means, understand. I'm teaching you now, Chukim Mishpatim. Moshe is about to teach the people all the laws he got at Har Sinai with the Ten Commandments. Okay? That God commanded me to teach you, to keep them in the land you're about to go and conquer. Make sure to keep them. Okay? And when we keep these laws, other nations will see us doing it, and they'll come to connect to God through our relationship with God. See in Pasuk Chet, what would the other nations say? Other nations say, "Rak am chacham v'navon hagoy gadol hazeh," like Pharaoh said about Yosef when he was impressed by his special connection to God. Ki mi goy gadol asher lo elim krovim elav, kashem Elokeinu, who's a God like our God, who's close to us? Umi goy gadol asher lo chum shvatim tzadikim. Like, look at this nation with such just and upright laws. Through our keeping the laws and being rewarded for keeping the laws and our special relationship with God, when other nations see that, we become the symbol of God, through which other nations can connect to God. Not they have to become Jewish, but through us we can be a blessing to other nations, the theme from Breshit, through our behavior as a nation and our special relationship with God. Now, how do most symbols represent God? I take metal, melt it down, pour it into an image, into a shape, and that shape represents a God. It could be a Buddha, you name it. But that's how idols are made. That's how symbols are made. God is telling you, I put you into Egypt. I melted you down. You're the raw material. Got it? And Har Sinai is the tavnit. Got it? No, it's Mount Sinai. You stood at Har Sinai, and God melted you down in Egypt, and now poured you are the symbol of God. And therefore, if we make another symbol of God, we're going to forget what we're all about. And therefore, if we make a different symbol of God, we're going to forget that that's our job to be the symbol of God, which is the core understanding of what's going on now in Sefer Dvarim. You have a responsibility that God's giving you a land to conquer, to set up a nation, following a special set of rules. And if you keep those rules as a nation in this land, which is located between the centers of civilization, between Egypt and Mesopotamia, that you can be blessing by being that model nation other nations can learn from. which is exactly why we have first understand. I'm about to teach you laws. Understand their underlying purpose. It's through your keeping these laws as a nation, you can be a symbol of God. It's what Isaiah calls an or legoim, a light to other nations. You can be called an avamon. You can be a mentor to other nations, and therefore remember your commitment at Har Sinai to be a nation serving God. And I'm commanding you to remember and not forget that event. You might think it's okay to make some image to remind you of that, and you'll take imagery from the first chapter of Chumash, Bereshit. You might think it's a good idea. No, that will lead you astray. More important, that's what you are. You are the people of Israel. That's why God put you down into Egypt. He melted you down. You now, as a nation, represent God. Wow. And now everything flows. The whole chapter now flows perfectly. And this is Moshe's introduction to his main speech in Perek Daled about what not to do. Now,
well, hold on. So I just love this idea that don't make an image of God. Don't make like some kind of way of a symbol of God, because you are supposed to be the symbol
you're the symbol of God. Not that you're a God, but it's through your behavior as a nation that you represent God.
Wow.
And by putting that on a different object, you're going to forget what you're all about.
In other words, God's put you in the smelting pot of Egypt, sort of broke us down so that we would be built up again at Har Sinai into a new form. That form supposed to be representing God through our good behavior.
Now, the first time Moshe went away to when Moshe went up to get the first luchot, people thought he wasn't coming back. They missed him, right? They wanted a symbol of Moshe or their connection to God. What did they do? They made a symbol, right? And Moshe came back. We solved the problem. Took a while. Right. Look at the next line. Right? First, again, in verse 20 in chapter 4. Okay? Vaetchanan lakach Hashem, God took you out from the smelting furnace of Egypt. Yeah. Okay? To make his la'am nachalak, you're his nation. Right. Remember? V'Hashem hitanav biderchem, but because of you, God got angry at me, and He said, I can't come in the land. Okay, what's He saying? Because I'm dying in this land, I'm not going to cross the Jordan. You are going to. Therefore, be careful. Don't forget the brit that God made with you, and you'll make a pesel to Murat Kol. God is a burning, like He's a consuming fire. What is Moshe worried about? That when he dies, what are they going to do?
They're going to make what? An image of Moshe?
The same thing they did with Chet HaEgel. They're going to make it a symbol of Moshe again. Remember, remember, Moshe went away, I need a symbol. Remember, they tell Aaron, Moshe's gone, I need a symbol now of our connection to God. And Aaron thinks it's a good idea to make an Egel. Remember? Then God tells, the same words. Moshe's worried now he's really going for good. Moshe's worried, Steph, what will the people do? They'll make a symbol of God. Right. Make a symbol of God. I'm saying, be a symbol of Moshe.
A symbol of Moshe.
Yeah. And he'll become an idol worship to the point that no one's going to know where he's buried. This is the last topic of the book. Right. Why does Chumash go out of its way? If we knew where he's buried, right, there'd be, I won't want to bring examples of people visiting graves. Now, by the way, where's Moshe buried?
Somewhere in the Harei Moab.
Wrong.
No?
That's where he dies.
Okay.
Read Chumash carefully, the last lines of Chumash. He dies on Har Nevo. Yeah. And God buries him in Poor. In Bagai, right. He lies in the valley where there's 24,000 other Jewish graves. Wow. We don't know. We know what cemetery he's in. We don't know where his grave is. God wants to make sure he doesn't become idol worship. Because if God just said he died on Hor HaHar, there'd be thousands of monuments on Hor HaHar. And people would go there visiting for Rosh Hashanah to visit his grave. Right? God doesn't want that to happen, and therefore God tells us we know the spot, not the plot. No, we don't know. We know what graveyard he's in, but he's buried together with 24,000 other people, with the people who died with Balpor. That's how Chumash ends. Read the last 4 lines of Chumash. Chumash ends that way. Chumash wants to make sure that Moshe doesn't become idol worship. Which explains why are those details. Remember, like Porto Bagai Mo Poor.
It's also kind of nice. Moshe is buried with his people,
And back in Parasha Vaetchanan, after God, he tells the people, Yoshua will take you in. Back in Gimel Pasuk Chavchet. Remember, God tells Moshe, go to the Rosh HaPisgah, look in all directions. You're not going to cross the Jordan. Sabet Yeshuv v'chaskei v'amtzeu. Ki hu yavor lifnei hamazeh, v'hu yanchel otam. But Yoshua will lead them. Therefore, don't worry. V'neshe Bagai Mo Beit Poor. where Moshe teaches these laws is later where he's going to be buried. Remember, he's buried, but Gai Bo Beit Por.
Wow.
And Por is Baal Peor is where the incident with Baal Peor happened. We read that in Parshat, the end of Parshat Balak, the beginning of Pinchas. There's 24,000 Jewish graves.
Wow.
Who served the wrong guys.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm saying that's why if we want to follow the flow, what's happening in Parshat Vaetchanan, step by step, it all makes perfect. It all flows beautifully. And it's all an introduction to the main speech, because the way we represent God is by keeping His Torah. The covenant, which will be our symbol of God, the Luchot HaBrit. The Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem will be where the Luchot will be. We go and visit to remember again. We visit God as employees, not as consumers.
Which ties us into one of the main events of the Parasha, which is the next topic, which is the Ten Commandments, or Aseret Dibrot.
Now, I need to be technical here for a minute, because if you don't understand this, you won't follow the book.
Okay.
There's a speech in Sefer Dvarim that begins in chapter 5, ends in chapter 26. The speech. What's the speech about? Moshe is not reviewing the laws of the first 4 books. That's what a lot of people think. That he's not doing it. What's the proof? 90% of the laws of the first 4 books are not in this speech, and 90% of the laws in the speech weren't in the first 4 books.
Right.
Now, it's a set of laws that needs repetition, but it's going to be a set of laws that came part and parcel with the Ten Commandments. The main set of laws of Chumash, they're going to guide us how we become a nation serving God on a national level. Those are laws of Sefer Devarim. They're so important to get their own book. We mentioned this last week. When were they first given to Moshe Rabbeinu? At Har Sinai. And when did he teach them? Over and over again, because these laws in constant repetition, especially on the 11-day journey of the first generation from Har Sinai to Kadesh Barnea, where they should have gone into Israel. Because if you don't keep these laws, you won't be able to conquer the land. And that'll be our guide. And when we get to the land of Israel, we're going to write all these laws down, this Torah down, on big stones in Har Eval. That'll be after the speech is over. But in this speech, that'll be the main topic. These are laws that came part and parcel with the Ten Commandments. Now, if there's when you give a speech, there's a classic law: say what you're going to say it, and say what you said. So let's look how Moshe begins his speech, following the rule. The first line should explain to us what's this speech all about.
Yeah.
Listen to what it says. Vayikra Moshe kol Yisrael v'yomer lehem.
Right.
Now,
chapter 5.
That's a great biblical theme. Because the first time God spoke to Moshe, remember? Vayikra elav Hashem min har lemor. At the burning bush. When Am Yisrael comes to Har Sinai in chapter 19 in Shemot, okay, God calls Moshe Vayikra Elohim Moshe mitocha from the Har and tells him, go make the proposition to the Jewish people. After the Mishkan is built, the end of Sefer Shemot, the Shekhinah as Moshe comes into the Mishkan, God calls him in. Vayikra Moshe. At Har Sinai, when he goes up for the first 40 days, Vayikra Moshe. When God wants to speak to Moshe, he calls him first.
Right.
But the word Vayikra. Now that Moshe is giving over the words of God to the people, Chumash uses the same wording that God used when he summons Moshe. That's how Moshe is going to summon the people to teach them the laws that God summoned him to teach them back in Har Sinai. Just as cute, that word Vayikra. It's a good name for a book. It's a joke.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Vayikra Moshe v'yomer lehem, quotation mark.
Right.
Got it? And it looks like the people fell asleep before he started. But how does Moshe get their attention? Shema Yisrael. Does that mean listen or obey? Keep that in mind. Now, Shema can mean to hear, like to hear something, like listen to music, or it can be to obey, like listen to me.
Yeah.
Now, Shema Yisrael, listen up, O Israel. Okay. Et hachukim v'et hamishpatim. Obviously, it means to obey now. Remember, Ba'im Shemot Yishma Mitzvotai? These chukim and mishpatim, these statutes and laws, Asher onochi dover bos nechem hayom. I'm speaking them to you today into your ears, even though God gave them to me. We'll see. Ulamadetem otam ushmartem lasotam. The laws I'm about to teach you from now till the end of chapter 26, 20-some chapters of laws. These laws, what do you have to do with them? Not just keep them, but it says, ulamadetem otam. Learn them and keep them. Part of Jewish law requires study. Welcome to the world of yeshiva. Right? But it's fundamental to Torah, to keeping the Torah, is studying the Torah.
Yeah.
That's called Limud Torah. It's called, we'll see in a minute, Vishamtam Levanecha. Now, after that introduction, that's the topic, Chukim Mishpatim. We'll see, we'll have the same words when the speech is over. Moshe will say at the end, on this day, I have taught you Chukim Mishpatim. Now, that's in chapter 26. We're going to take a look at verse 19 later on, or verse 16. Now, I would expect the next line to be what? Law number 1, like Shulchan Aruch. Instead, Moshe gives an introduction. Before I get to the specific laws, Moshe has to explain under what authority is he teaching these laws. And now the key line that introduces the entire speech, Hashem Elokeinu, Kratimanu Brit B'chorev. Hashem, our God. Now, is he only our God? I think he's everyone's God, isn't he?
Right.
So it can't mean he's our God to the exclusion of other nations, but it means he's our boss. And what's my proof?
That he made a covenant with
Because he made a covenant at Har Sinai to be a mamlechet kohanim b'kol kadosh. We entered a covenant with God to be his employees. What's called Eved Adom. We're on the service of God. Later, Devarim is going to refer to it as a parent-child relationship. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. We're like children. That will bring up the topic of love and Sefer Devarim. But Moshe begins, before he gets to the details of the laws, he says, these laws are part of a covenant that you made at Har Sinai. Now, what year is this?
The 40th year.
So what would the people say who hear this speech?
Well, you weren't there.
That wasn't us. No, Moshe says, you weren't there, but you were there. Remember saw you at Sinai?
Yeah.
It's based on the next line. Lo et avotenu krat Hashem et habrit hazot. That brit wasn't only made with your parents. Ki itanu anachnu ele po hayom kulenu chaim. We who survived, remember, Vaetchanan Vikim, Bashem Chaim Kolchem Hayom, we had in Perek Daled. You survived the desert, the 40 years. This brit was made with you as well, because it was a covenant between God and the people. Not God and people, small p, but God and people, capital P. But God makes a brit with the nation. Therefore, even though you weren't there, you were there.
Yeah.
Because we as a nation are part of that brit.
As a collective.
Yeah. Now, God, if these are God's laws and working for him, he should do the teaching. So God says, you're right. Panim b'panim. I mean, Moshe says, God spoke to you face to face at Har Sinai, but I was the middleman because you were afraid to go up. Because, and then even though God wanted to teach you these laws directly, you got scared, and I became the middleman. And he told me these laws. Now, is verse 4, God spoke to you face to face, talking about the 10 Commandments, and I was the middleman teaching you the rest of Chumash, right? Or is panim b'panim God's original plan, which you got scared right away, and everything was through Moshe? That'll be Ramban later and back in Shemot. Or was it the first 2 and the last 8? You follow? The Parashim have a heyday with this one. We talked about back in Shemot. It's intentionally ambiguous. But the main thing is, Moshe has to explain why Moshe is teaching the laws and not God himself.
Yeah.
Now, to make sure that's clear, I want to jump to the end of the speech. We have to finish soon. The end of the speech, again, in chapter 26, verse 16, when the speech is over, look at the last line of the speech. Hayom hazeh, it's been a long day since the speech began, 22 chapters earlier. Hashem Elokecha mitzavcha lasot et ha'chukim elev et ha'mishpatim. The laws I'm teaching you, they're not my laws. That's the Rambam's principle, that the laws that Moshe teaches, Moshe didn't make them up.
Right.
They're from God. God, your boss, Hashem Elokecha, remember? Hashem Elokeinu kratimanu brit b'chorev, Hashem our boss. Now, how would he say he's our boss, but he's everyone's God? Hashem Elokeinu is Hashem Echad. We talked about that last week a little bit. But you can't understand that first line of Shema without this background. And therefore, he says here at the end, on this day, Hashem, your boss, Hashem Elokecha, your God, is commanding you to keep these laws, even though I'm teaching them to you. Okay? And got it? And how do you have to keep them? Keep them with the right attitude, with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. That's the beginning of Shema. And then you took upon yourself that he'll be your God. Remember, we'll go back to this psukim when we get to Parasha Ki Tavo. But we're reviewing the Har Sinai theme, that he'll be your God, you follow his ways, etc. Lishma b'kolo, to obey him. And God took upon himself, remember, anu mamrecha tamamirenu, lo lam skula, kasher di berlach, you'll be his am skula.
Yeah.
His treasured nation, as he told you back in Har Sinai, to keep all of his laws. Utitcha yon akol going to put you in a leadership position above all the nations, litila shem utiferet, for God's glory and name and reputation, etc. Uliotcha am kadosh lashem elokecha kasher diber. And if you keep these laws, that will make you an am kadosh. Remember Har Sinai?
Right.
This is echoing the covenant in Har Sinai. You'll be for me a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, a sovereign nation representing God, set aside from the other nations to serve me. And again, that's the mega theme of Chumash and for sure Sefer Devarim. Now, once we make that commitment, I need a guidebook how to accomplish that. That guidebook or instruction book will be called Torah. That's going to be Vizot HaTorah. That'll be remember the speech began in chapter 5. Right before the speech begins, Chumash introduces the speech in chapter 4, verse, we're back, Moshe finished speaking his first speech towards the end of chapter 4. Then we set aside 3 cities of refuge. We'll talk about that maybe another time. But then, how does Chumash, the narrator of Chumash, introduce Moshe's speech? Don't stand up. But in verse 44 in chapter 4, B'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael. What's coming up in the made speech is the Torah, the instruction book that God gave, that Moshe gave, that God gave Moshe, and Moshe taught to Bnei Yisrael. Therefore, in Sefer Devarim, the word Torah is referring to the main speech, the laws of the main speech. And then when the speech is over, he'll take the words of this Torah and write them on Harival. Now, later in rabbinic literature, the word Torah means everything. And that's why it's confusing sometimes. Now, our custom to quote this pasuk, when we do Hagbah, we get the impression it's referring to all 5 books.
Right.
But in Sefer Devarim itself, the Zot HaTorah is referring to the speech coming up.
Right. Which
comes with the 10 Commandments, which begins with 10 commandments, which is all about a covenant, and the main laws of the covenant, and these laws need constant repetition. Remember, when he tells the story how you heard these 10 commandments directly from God, we wrote them on Luchot, and then you all got scared because you're going to be consumed by this fire. You begged me to be the middleman, and then and God said, "Great idea." And then God says, "You stay here with me up on Har Sinai. I'll teach you all the laws, and you'll teach them." And now Moshe, and these laws, the first law was Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But remember, He's your boss, but He's everyone's God, and you're representing Him. And then you have to love your job. You know, for this to work, you have to have the right relationship. But you had these words, these laws I'm teaching you from here to chapter 26. Allah v'avecha on your heart.
So
you have to repeat them over and over again to your children. 24/7. You know, when you're on your doorpost, wherever you go, when you get up, when you go to sleep.
Isn't it just the words of Shema? Like we don't put the whole mitzvah speech on our doorpost.
Yeah, but we'll see later on what we do. We take the highlights.
Okay.
V'afta and v'hayim Shema. We'll see what are the highlights.
I see.
Because reading the whole thing would be too much. The rabbis beautifully pick a unit, which we call later on. We'll see. We'll do that next week when we do Parasha Ekev.
Okay.
Ekev unit.
Very good.
Okay. Anyway, there's something like we spent a whole year on Parasha Vaetchanan, and there's so much to do here. You know why Shemor v'Zachor, etc. But we're limited in time.
Wow.
But the main thing is we want to focus on chapter 4 because this is setting the stage for the book. And as we go through Sefer Devarim, we'll go back to this theme over and over again.
Very good. Wow. Thank you so much, Rav Leibtag. Some real great stuff in there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. I'm wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.